Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers, and I'm looking this morning at a book from Oxford University Press. It's a book actually published about Tom Bingham's work. Lord Bingham will be known to many of you as a senior law lord. He was a senior judge for many years. Sadly, he died a year ago, and to commemorate the anniversary of his death, a number of books have been produced, and this is one of them. This book is called Lives of the Law. You can see the book itself. There's the front cover. It's selected essays and speeches from the year 2000 to his death in 2010. What you've got inside is a useful introduction, which is well worth looking at. The contents set out what he includes in terms of the comments he's made and observations he's made, and that's the second part of it. You've also got two lives of the law, as he calls it. That's the life of Dr. Johnson and Jeremy Bentham, both of which I found fascinating, I must say. Nice picture of him at the back there, and there's also a very useful and quite detailed index. The book is narrative, but there are footnotes. For instance, that's a chapter on habeas corpus, but you get the general feel for this book. What I like about it, although we've written a detailed review, which I'll mention a bit about in a minute, what I like is it's easy to read, apart from anything else. We've given it the title, Bingham's Instinctive Insights for the Future, because this is really, I have to say, a retrospective in the sense that he's been reviewing the law, and now that he's sadly passed on, we've got something that we can look at of what he did during his lifetime and the views that he put forward. This is what we say. It's been on the web and in some journals. We've said this. This selection of Tom Bingham's major essays and speeches is a great tribute to a great man. Bingham's been described by the Guardian newspaper as the greatest judge of our time, and he has some pretty stiff competition, frankly, as well. But this book will solidify, in our view, his position as we review the first decade of the 21st century, certainly in its legal and constitutional implications. And make no mistake here, Bingham is rightly described as a towering figure in modern British public life, and rightly too. Yes, he championed the rule of law as he saw it, and human rights inside and outside court. So what the Oxford University Press have done here is to produce a retrospective series of explorations around the judicial world, which will be of great benefit to the jurisprudent and scholar, as well as any future historian interested in this current period of history. I certainly think it's of use to those studying jurisprudence and getting an understanding of how judges think. Let me move on and say that in the introduction to the work, there's an introduction by Professor Sir Geoffrey Jowl, which you can see there, and it's detailed, and I have actually borrowed some of the comments in it, because Jowl explains the difficult period during Bingham's period in high office, when the relationship between the judiciary and Parliament was often tense. So with the advent of the Human Rights Act in particular, and other pieces of legislation which appear controversial to some, a new agenda was set for the turn of the century, with Bingham at the forefront of what many have described as this new judicial orthodoxy. And I refer, of course, to previous judges in the 20th century who set their own stamp, specifically Lord Denning. Of course, to others, the arrival of this substantial constitutional reform, which Bingham saw as quintessentially British, and the creation of the Supreme Court itself, have both been the subject of some criticism, mainly for party political reasons, I hasten to add. However, realists are beginning to see that neither revision nor repeal of the Human Rights Act will free the UK from the obligations it has under the European Convention, whatever the grumbling. So frankly, it's here to stay, at least for the foreseeable future, but there may be some changes at some stage, but that's doubtful, I think, before 2015 at the earliest. There are 5 parts to the book and 22 chapters, which cover a wide range of what we call practical jurisprudence, where we get to see how the formulation of judicial thought is built upon. And I think that's quite useful to know, because I always remember as an advocate, know your judge. That is by far the best way of remembering how to deal with things. We start with the Constitution and the rule of law. Obviously dice is included, plus a bit of laws reform. Then we go to the business of judging or judicial realism, as some may see it. Probably the area of greatest historic significance is Part 3 on human rights and human wrongs, which also reviews habeas corpus and leads conveniently to the common law in action and a modern review of the duty of care. I particularly like the internationalisation of the common law chapter. That's not chapter 20, before the closing part covers people involved, lives of the law, which I mentioned earlier, Dr. Johnson and Jeremy Bentham, both of whom are, again, towering figures in their own way. Finally, a detailed and very useful index is there. I think the final word goes to Jowl, who defines Bingham's immense authority, and I'm going to paraphrase this with some following sort of modified words. Bingham's authority, for instance, rests not only on a formidable analytical skill, but also that Bingham understood and represented the finest sources and forces behind our constitutional values, methods and preferences. And Bingham was also profoundly sensitive, of course, to the requirement to accommodate traditional British ways to a rapidly changing society and the wider world where liberty and the rule of law thrive. That, of course, is the message which comes through Lives of the Law, which I think is a fitting tribute to Bingham's memory as we weigh up the legacy of his instinctive insights for the future, now that he is sadly no longer with us. So thank you to all concerned for producing this touching and important book. Bye-bye.